In May of 1787, a fleet of 11 ships led by Arthur Phillip set out for New South Wales, or as it is known today, Australia. They were on a mission for the British government to start a convict colony there. They landed in Botany Bay on January 18, 1788. Unfortunately, the conditions there were not suitable to sustain a colony, so they moved north to Port Jackson, named it Sydney Cove, and raised the British flag. Even though Port Jackson was more suitable than Botany Bay, starting a new colony was still very tough. So they relied on the farms to the west and bought produce from the locals. A second fleet came in 1790 with much needed food and supplies. This fleet was nicknamed the Death Fleet because most of the people on board did not survive the journey. In the beginning, relations between the colony and Aboriginals was peaceful and trade-based. Aboriginals began to realize eventually that the colonists disrupted the land, squandered their resources, and interfered with their way of life. Because of this, clanspeople attacked the colonies on several times between 1790 and 1810. From the time the British arrived until 1823, New South Wales was a penal colony comprised of convicts, Marines, and their wives. For years, British explorers had been expanding into Australia, and in 1823, a legislative council and a Supreme Court were set up under the New South Wales Act of 1823. From there, treatment of the Aboriginals progressively got worse. In 1835, John Batman signed treaties with the Aboriginals to purchase land. In response, the governor, Richard Burke, proclaimed that the land belonged to no one prior to the British Crown taking possession. By 1931, Australia had the power to exercise independently. With the help of state governors who were appointed by the Queen or advice from British ministers, they did so for many years. In 1975, Joe Belk-Peterson sent advice to the Queen regarding an extended term for a controversial Queensland governor. The Queen's advisors refused to pass on the advice. Neville Ron was so alarmed at British involvement in Australian affairs that he proposed breaking off links unilaterally. In 1979, he proposed the enactment laws of terminating Privy Council appeals from state courts and requirement for the Queen to act on state advice in appointing state governors. Britain refused to pass these laws. 7 years later, on March 3, 1986, the Australia Act made it so Britain had to hand over control to the Australian government.
People of Australia, do you want your independence? Yeah! Britain, we don't want you no more.
What? Girl. You know, fine. You don't want me no more? Fine. Goodbye.
Today, Australia is thriving as one of the world's wealthiest countries. They have the 12th largest economy and the 5th highest per capita income. There are many multinational corporations in Australia, including Billabong, 2XU, and Rip Curl. Australia exports iron ore and concentrates, coal and gold, and imports petroleum, vehicles, and pharmaceuticals. Their main trading partners are China, Japan, United States, Republic of Korea, and Singapore. Australia has a gross domestic product of 1.521 trillion and is 8th on the Quality of Life Index as opposed to its main trading partner, China, who was 58th on that same index. Although Britain helped develop Australia, there were many negative impacts from their presence there. The land and resources were wasted. Many Aboriginals were killed by new disease and the colonial government. Between 1869 and 1969, over 100,000 Aboriginals were taken from their families. Because of these things, more than 200 of a previous 250 tribes are extinct today.